Good morning and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be discussing low-income housing for seniors, how to get that fast. And most of you are confusing the concept of vouchers and the housing authority, what's affordable housing, what's subsidized housing, what's low-income housing. All these different phrases do not mean the same thing. They all do very different things, and some of them in fact have nothing to do with actually getting you housing or any connection whatsoever with Section 8 or the local housing authority. So this morning what I've done is I've increased the size in case if you have a problem with seeing or if you have a problem with hearing, then you'll be able to see everything on the screen pretty clearly, okay? And also I should admit that I should wear eyeglasses, and that's part of the reason why I actually make some of the information on the screen available. So, anyways, you're welcome to read about all this in the description, but today we're going to go over this, show you if you're 55 and older, how we can find you housing much quicker than you going directly through your local housing authority to get a housing choice voucher, all right? So, affordable apartment communities are wonderful options for seniors living on a limited or fixed income, meaning Social Security disability, and for those of you that are receiving survivor benefits. Now, what typically happens is most of you think that you actually have to go down to your local housing authority, you apply, you wait for a decade, and then you get a voucher, you go find a place, and then congratulations, you now have a new home. Well, there's a much simpler method to the madness than actually going down to the housing authority and going through all of that. In fact, they have what they call subsidized housing, okay? And that's one of those many words that I'm going to be throwing out while I'm talking to you. Now, subsidized housing can be administered directly by the landlord. So you go to a building that is 55 and older, a senior community. They have a way of giving you a couple of pages of documents. You fill it out. They make a direct submission to the housing authority. And there's pretty much, in most cases, not a wait list. As long as you meet the applicable rules of age, income, and other things that may be involved, then they usually will grant that type of housing to you. So let's read a little bit further into this. So now, how all this actually typically works is you have a investor, a builder, or an owner that has a building, and he applies for LIHTC, which is a which is a low income housing tax credit. When he does that, he allocates units in the building that may only be used for seniors that have a variety of different issues that get funding from the housing authority. Okay, so we're no longer talking about vouchers and all that. We're just saying that the housing authority will give them direct deposit funds specifically for seniors 55 and older. So it's a funding level, it has nothing to do with it. And so we'll get a little bit deeper into that in a minute. So these landlords that have LIHTC tax credits allocate those units. You go and apply. They send in a quick application to the housing authority, and they either approve it or deny it. It's a real fast process, actually, unless you live in a community and somewhere in a large city like California, New York, where the landlord may have a waiting list, which means they're waiting for a person to move out of the unit, and then it becomes available. And if it's highly populated, the landlord may choose to have a little bit of a lottery to give everybody that's a senior a chance. So it's not like when you were in grade school, first person in line gets lunch first. So moving back onto that, so we're going to go down. The tax credit provides a tax incentives to developers for construction, rehabilitation, and affordable rental housing for low-income individuals, mainly seniors. Okay, so just so you know, we're speaking in that direction. There are many types of rental properties that are eligible for LIHTC, including apartment buildings, single-family dwellings, townhomes, and duplexes. Pretty much anywhere a person can live, that's where you could likely apply for this type of senior housing. And the main thing is, when you talk to these landlords and owners, you need to make sure and make it very clear to them, hey, do you or do you not have LIHTC tax provisions? And do you, in fact, have an available apartment? I'm not here to rent market rate. If you don't have LIHTC tax benefits, and this is not a 55 and older senior community, I am not interested. Good luck. There are a lot of landlords that use clever words in their websites and on the internet, and they say they are affordable, low income, and all this stuff, but they don't, in fact, have these tax credits. So, really, what you're receiving is a market rate apartment with a discount. I don't have anything to do with that stuff because it's very scammy. Okay, you don't know whether or not, and you're going to want access to your Social Security check and all that. So I would advise you always to ensure that you're going through a federally tax-funded program. All right. Now, the owners and developers of these projects receiving LIHTC agreed to meet the income test for tenants and their gross rent tests. There are 3 ways to meet this, and I'm going to show you here on the screen. At least 20% of the project's units are occupied by tenants with an income of 50% or less the median area income. If you have people in your area that are making $80,000, then it would indicate to you that your Social Security payments or whatever form of money you're receiving need to be below the $40,000 level. Okay, so you have to check and get accurate numbers from the area to ensure your AMI, area median income, is correct. And then they have 40%, and then sometimes they go as low as 30%. So obviously you can read these 3 bullet points on the screen and just see. It's different for every county, so you really need to check. Now, one thing before we get a little bit further into this, most of you know me for years, 15 years, I've been doing consultant as a Section 8 consultant, okay, or a HUD consultant. And I offer that service for $40 for 30 minutes. And I work people through a number of complex issues. I've been doing this a very long time. I've been on YouTube for about 6 years. Most people know and identify me as an authority, one of the more absolute authorities in this area. I help people with COC housing, senior housing, HUD housing, housing choice vouchers, and also getting rental assistance and other things, okay? So I welcome you to look up my reputation. If you're looking for somebody to get you through a complicated process, I might be the best option you have in today's market, especially during this pandemic, okay? So with that being said, we're going to move on. So the gross rent test just means simply that, okay? How much are you making and whether or not you would be able to apply and get that particular subsidized apartment. Now, the other thing I want to tell you guys is, look, a lot of you guys are getting subsidized housing. Now, so let's imagine how that actually plays out. Here's the housing authority. They have a checkbook. And they tell, okay, you own the building at 100 Orange Street. Now, that building at 100 Orange Street, every unit has a funding level attached to it. So it's not a voucher. So when they make payments, direct payments to that landlord, it is directly tied to the unit, which means you cannot port. You go there, you live there, after 12 months, you think, oh, well, you know, I'd like to take my voucher and move somewhere else. This is not a voucher. This is a direct payment. So if the housing authority says, okay, we're going to allocate $100,000 in funding, direct deposit to the landlord for unit A1. And then for unit A2, $100,000, and so on. So the money is directly attached to the unit. If you move, you cannot take the money or the physical unit with you, okay? You would have to convert it over to HCB voucher. So this is what they call tenant-based housing, or TBA, or TBV. And now most of you are familiar with tenant-based voucher funding and then tenant and project-based, PBV, tenant-based voucher. Neither one of those are really the same thing. This is more like funding, okay? So if you are already in a senior housing and you want to go somewhere different, then you would simply need to start the process again, apply for the particular unit with the funding attached to it, and then you can go there. If you want to go through the more complicated process of trying to port from that type of senior community, then you would need to convert it over to a housing choice voucher. See, there's a lot that goes on with this stuff. This is why I've been doing it 15 years, you know. There's a tremendous amount of operations, policy, legislation. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of pages in order to learn some of the intricacies of this. But for this video, I'm going to keep moving. All project participants must comply with the income rental tests. And then it looks at whether or not your age, your income, your residency qualification. So if you're actually a resident of the county, I'd just advise most of you to update your address to reflect you living in the county or at least nearby. You can achieve that by going and getting a checking account in that county and then having the driver's license department change your address to whatever in that county, and that would make you a resident, okay? So it doesn't need to be a sophisticated process for you to live in whatever county you'd like. Typically, these buildings will rotate between 55 and 62, okay? So it starts at 55. Now, look, the only time I would recommend project-based stuff is when it's 55 and older. Okay, there are usually no problems associated with project-based or tenant-based if the building only accepts people 55 and older. That is the only time you'll ever hear me say that. I would not, if you're under 55, I would never recommend tenant-based or project-based housing or even subsidized because of the problems that come along with younger folks. All right. Now, with that being said, you need to check and see if they're 55 or 62 and older. If they have an available unit that there's funding attached to it, then you apply. And if you meet the criteria of age, money, and being a resident of the county, then it's yours. It's not a big process. The landlord may look at your credit to see if you're going to be the type of person. They may want to look at your criminal history, see if you have a problem there. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward, and it happens fairly quick. Once the landlord submits your subsidized application via email, fax, or whatever it may be to the housing authority, they usually return an answer within a week, and then you either move in or you don't. Now, as I mentioned, there are waiting lists and there are lotteries if you live in a major city. Well, look, if you're not connected by family or whatever, maybe the best thing for you is to get in the car, travel an extra 30 minutes, and apply in a county where you know the population is lower, and you can simply get into housing quicker. You see how that might work out? So, again, guys, this is not a voucher. It is simply the housing authority funding specific apartments, A1, A2, A3, and so on. The landlord must be LIHTC tax accredited. They're receiving those taxes. They're legitimately connected to the housing authority. If you meet those criteria, then that is the very definition of what subsidized means. Subsidized means I don't have a voucher. The government's going to subsidize the payments to that particular unit, and that cannot be ported. You would first have to convert it, okay? Now I'm going to go on down, and then just some other great information about this. They talk about area median incomes being anywhere from 60 as low as 30. Remember, if the lower percentage of income the building accepts, the poorer the people that likely will be there. Okay, so when you start reaching as low as 30% of the AMI, which means 1/3. So a person, the area median income is 60,000, and a person that's a senior comes in as a 30% client, which means they're only making 20,000 a year, then likely the people in the building will likely be some of the poorest people in town. If they're 50% AMI, you see how that might work out, okay? I wouldn't worry about that. Like I said, senior living is usually pretty easy no matter what income levels you're making, and it's just a lot less problems. Especially when you don't have to go out and hunt for with a voucher around town, figure out who's going to take you. Let's take a look here. I'm going to scroll through some of this information. Remember, all this information will be in the video. I'm just trying to utilize some of the important parts. Now, I want to go ahead and give credit to the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs. Some of the information they provided for this, and I'm using that to help you guys out. So they have additional requirements here with criminal check and all that. So that reaches the conclusion of the video, but I wanted to explain that, guys, if you're 55 and older, don't come to me about a voucher. It's not necessary. You don't need to do that. What we can do is round up a legitimate list of properties that accept 55 and older. You can put in a simple application for a couple of pages. They submit it very quickly through email to the housing authority, and if they accept you and you meet the criteria, then you can usually move in a week later. You guys that are 55 and older going down to the housing authority and trying to get a housing choice voucher, and you're waiting years, is completely unnecessary. If you're in a big metropolitan area, especially ones that have strong, big homeless populations, I would suggest addressing smaller counties that are around you. And remember, the smaller the county and the richer the people are, the easier it is to get into those buildings. And you might find the quality of life to be a lot better just driving 30 minutes over that county line. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude the video. But I'm going to tell you guys, if you don't understand what's happening, you don't want to go have the stress of dealing with all this, sometimes the best way to do this is hiring a Section 8 consultant, okay? I'm not affiliated with them. I just have had a stellar reputation over many, many years consulting people and landlords. I think I've housed probably over now 10,000 over 15 years, and I've worked with over 100 landlords in complexes that reach above 200 to 500 units. So I am an absolute authority in the area. So if you want to spend the $40 for 30 minutes to consult with me, it usually makes this process a lot simpler than you spending weeks searching, trying to figure out the differentials between all these different types of housing, and then running yourself in circles. And the one thing that I see is a lot of you guys are getting out there on Google and Yahoo and looking up low-income subsidized, and what you're doing is you're blowing a lot of your money on application fees for places that don't even have that, because landlords have been very scammy about pretending to be participating in the program when they're in fact not. So, it's probably the best $40 you'll ever spend. So with that being said, I've enjoyed talking to you. One thing I'm going to tell you is I do care about seniors a great deal. I care about everybody that comes to my channel. It has never been about money for me. My goal for 14 of the 15 years, I offered this service absolutely free. This pandemic has raised things to a height where I'm working 15, 20 hours, sometimes in a day, and it's hard. I have to find a way to compensate myself, and so that's why I do charge at this point. But it's still a highly valuable service. And I do, like I said, I do care about the people that come to the channel. I want all of you to have housing, and if it means you getting a $20,000 discount, $20,000 you don't have to spend. I think that $40 is a small, very small compensation compared to what you would actually get out of the situation. So I would encourage you to review your options, and if you believe that you're able to handle this on your own, by all means, please do. Do your homework, do your research, get out there and do it. I know a lot of you are very high functioning. For the rest of you that you really just don't want to have to wade through all the different things that are involved and want to get this right the first time, then sometimes the best option, as I said, is hiring a consultant. So I've enjoyed talking with you this morning, and I hope to see you on the channel, okay? Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.